Hey guys, Zach here. I was doing a webinar for a company and I wanted to share this as a resource for people. You're welcome to share this with your network. This is a great opportunity to learn about Agile, Scrum, and to receive a certification out of it. So I hope you guys enjoy. I want to welcome everybody to this Agile Professionals course. This is really designed for us to grow and enhance our foundational knowledge of Scrum. Now, we have a lot of executive leadership programs here at Star Global College, and a lot of them are geared towards enhancing your career and guiding you towards the industry. Now, this is a basic course, but there is a Scrum Master course, which is really a fun course. And we do it as a team on once a month, I believe. But according to Glassdoor, the average base pay for somebody that's trained in the Scrum philosophies is around $98,000 per year, with the range typically falling somewhere between $80,000 to $120,000. Now, it's typically done as a networking event. You guys are welcome to register. It's on our website, starglobal.education. So I want to welcome you guys to the world of Agile. My name is Zach. I'm an industry trainer. I'm also a facilitator of both Lean Six Sigma and Agile, and I've been training in these philosophies for years. This is one of my proudest moments, being able to go back to the community college that I started at many years ago and was able to donate $5,000 to our heroes. And it's cool to be a part of that experience. It's really cool when you, I'm an industry trainer. I've been working with Agile and Lean philosophies for around 15 years, and I've been a facilitator since probably about 2014 in a lot of these programs. I come from a background in economic development, focusing on workforce initiatives. I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran. I hope nobody holds that against me. I love the military, and I love being able to show the guys a different way of thinking, right? In the military, it's very black and white thinking. It's either right or wrong. And a lot of times in industries, we have to be creative to be effective leaders. And throughout my stint, I've had many articles published in regards to workforce development and, talking about my life's journey. And you'll see on the left side where I struggled with my transition back in 2012. And then I found a career and a pathway in helping others succeed. So I've worked in a variety of different industries, from healthcare to manufacturing to banking to pharmaceuticals. And it's just a really cool journey to be a part of and say, hey, I get to help change people's lives. When we talk about a servant leader, right? A servant leader is someone who prioritizes the needs of their team. Empowering and supporting them to reach their full potential. Now, Agile has that approach, and we're going to talk about different philosophies along the way. So here's kind of our agenda for the evening, right? We're going to talk about the Agile and Scrum methodologies. We're going to go into the pillars of Scrum. We're then going to discuss the roles of Scrum, and then we're going to talk about the frameworks we can use as leaders to really create and sustain organizational change. It is effective in many different worlds, right? It's usually done in software development, but you're starting to see it really take over into the project management aspect of it. Fun little fact here. Did you know that Agile Scrum took over in the time of COVID? Agile and Scrum methodologies has merged as popular choices to responses to the pandemic. Now, some pillars of Scrum that I want to talk about. When we talk about the pillars of Scrum, there's three philosophies that it's built upon. The three pillars are transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Transparency, that makes that communication key, right? Because if you can make things transparent, it can make it understood. And if you can make change understood, you'll have a lot more buy-in in sustaining that change. Inspection. Inspect what you expect at all times. As we inspect our progress as leaders, maybe we want to, give the definition of done. And adaptation. How are we going to adapt to these changes? Overall, these three pillars, they allow us to create a strong foundation for project management in today's age. Scrum's based on a empirical thinking, meaning, basically a lean philosophy and reducing waste and things that get in our way as organizations and as leaders. Now you have adaptive planning, and planning is a crucial aspect of Scrum because it allows us to sit down as leaders and facilitate that change and the growth that's much needed and collaborate with our team. A lot of times we want to be proactive versus reactive in the industry. And we see a lot of that through leadership, and you saw a lot of change happen in the early 2020s. I say early 2020s, it's like 2024, Zach, it's still early. But during the start of COVID, you saw a lot of industries being more reactive to their approach of onboarding or bringing on people, bringing on staff. They did it more in a proactive approach way. When we talk about the evolutionary development of Scrum, we can plan the different phases throughout. When we talk about the collaboration and empowerment piece, if we can bring together our workforce in a way that empowers them to lead and change the lives of others, then it becomes relevant of how powerful Scrum is in our industries. When we talk about continuous improvement, we're talking about hitting that bullseye each time, and it's just not possible, but we're going to strive for that perfection. Now, some pros and cons of Scrum. I want to give you the pros because I haven't really seen much negative with Scrum, but I will share my insights with you. So, Scrum gives us the ability to be flexible and adaptable. In the Marine Corps, we always had this phrase that was called Semper Gumby, and means always flexible, right? Well, in Scrum, it's kind of like you're building a plane and flying it at the same time. So you create that flexibility and adaptability. Agile and Scrum allow us to identify risk early and mitigate those risks over time, thus increasing our customer satisfaction because we're not sending a shitty quality product to them. We're sending an actual 100% quality guaranteed product that has the oversight of our staff. We talk about visibility and transparency being, relevant in today's industries, right? And when I go into industry, there's always two types of issues. Number one, it's communication, and it's followed up by training issues. Well, if we can create that transparency and visibility and use this framework to lead our organization, we can be better leaders and better at organizational tasks. We talk about the pros being continuous improvement, always revolving to that next level. And next we'll talk about that enhanced team collaboration aspect. And we've kind of hit home on this a little bit. And you'll see throughout this that some of these I'm really not trying to overly repeat, but I'm trying to get the point across that a lot of this instills from team collaboration. Doing all these things, you can create a product and make it a faster time to market, right? It can benefit organizations in many ways.
Is a flexible, iterative approach to software development and teamwork in general. It prioritizes collaboration, customer satisfaction, and delivering working increments quickly. It's a popular methodology for managing product development in an agile environment, and it's designed to accommodate changing requirements, minimize risk, and maximize value delivery. In Scrum, cross-functional teams work in sprints, typically 2-week iterations, to produce a potentially shippable product increment. The Scrum framework includes roles such as the Scrum Master, Product Owner, and Development Team. They have regular meetings such as sprint planning, daily Scrum, sprint backlog refinement, and sprint retrospective. These meetings ensure the process is transparent, adaptive, and continuously improving.
Organizational change from a standpoint of continuous improvement. Now, in our sprint review, we're going to seek feedback. We're going to discuss the adaptations and adjustments to the process, and we're going to reflect upon that backlog. Now, that backlog is really interesting because the purpose of the backlog, it's a key artifact in Scrum. It serves as a dynamic and prioritization list of features, enhancements, and tasks that need to be addressed in a project. It represents the requirements, ideas, and feedback of the stakeholders, and it allows us to understand our customer's product better. So that product backlog, I want you to think of it as a grocery list. Right? In this, your product backlog will have what the purpose is of it, what the content, the prioritization, how do you rank what priorities are in the project. We'll talk about user stories, estimations. We don't get into that in this course, but creating a dynamic nature, creating that product backlog, that grocery list of all of those items. And keep in mind, this can be refined over time. This can collaborate and cause collaboration. You talk about emergent details, releasing that planning phase and transparency of your product. So that grocery list, that's your backlog. It's your grocery list or receipt. So all of the actual items go into this list, and these items can be broken up into sprints per se. So when we discuss the sprint, we review the backlog items. We can estimate what that sprint backlog looks like, what priorities is going to take the longest. We can agree upon sprint goals and sprint backlog items, and we can review the dependencies between them. With this, we can review the sprint planning outcome and kind of adjust for it. Now, sprints, in my experience, are typically between 2 to 4 weeks, somewhere right there in 3-week range, 2.5. But that should be your sprint duration. Anything longer, you're going to experience a lot of fatigue and burnout. Now, Scrum comes from an ideology of the rugby term, right? And in rugby, you're trying to get the ball downfield as fast as possible. And that's the idea here with Scrum. It is adopting that principle into project management ideologies. Well, you have something in Scrum called a daily meeting, right? Well, the purpose of the daily meeting is that kind of to discuss what activities you have that for the day. The structure and frequency of it should be every day, and the structure of it should be at least 15 minutes. And it allows us to focus our path. How can we focus on improving our process? Well, a lot of it comes with communication. And if we can improve that communication in these meetings, that's ideal for continuous improvement. Now, the 3 questions for the daily Scrum. Right? What did I accomplish yesterday? What will I work on today? And what are my obstacles or the things that get in my way? As leaders in an organization, we have to take this and, we have to get rid of those impediments, those issues in an organization that oftentimes drive us and bog us down in our time management. So the three questions you'll have during this 15-minute window is, what did I accomplish today? And this is, what you're expecting and prompting your team to kind of give you feedback on. And you notice these are not yes or no questions, they're open-ended. And that's where you're going to see a lot of facilitation and growth. As leaders, our job isn't just to tell people what to do, it's to help them grow and oftentimes replace us as we transition down the career line. So the components of Daily Scrum, it's owned by the development team. You're going to see your development team working in here on your Scrum process. It's owned by the development team, meaning they are responsible for the subject matter experts of it. It comes from the backlog or grocery list, like we call it. And that sprint backlog is dynamic, meaning we can change as we see fit. Now, with that, I know it's kind of a double-edged sword, but it should create a clear vision of what the life cycle of the project looks like. I want to hit a home on is, what is a user story? Well, a user story is a concise, high-level, kind of 30,000-foot view of a feature or functionality from the perspective of an end user or customer. So in this, we have our role, right? Our action and our benefit. So kind of an easier way of looking at this is by looking at this example, right? Here is the role, here is the action, and here is the benefit, right? The role, I can add items to my wish list from a product detail page. Number 2, I can view those from an account dashboard. And number 3, I receive notifications when my items from my wish list go on sale. I'll move myself over so you guys can see that. But as an online shopper, you can use this kind of user storyboard to save items to your wish list so you can find them better and faster. You see how that gives a concise direction for the project and what we're looking at and accomplishing? Now, I want to share this with you guys because I use this in both Lean and Six Sigma philosophies, as well as Agile and Scrum Master courses. This is something I show leadership development teams as a framework to kind of create a process and monitor that process. This is called a Kanban board. A Kanban is a project management and workflow management system. There's a show I used to watch with my family. It was called Silicon Valley, and pretty much it revolves around IT, and you'll see them in the background doing Kanban boards. You might hear it as a Scrum board too. I've heard that terminology be kind of thrown around, right? It originated from the Toyota production system in the 1940s, but it's a visual system that aims to improve efficiency, productivity, and collaboration in the workplace. The word Kanban comes from a Japanese terminology meaning kan, which means visual, and ban means card or board. Now, the system relies on the use of sticky notes. It's often done on a whiteboard, and they're just kind of throwing it up there, and then they're putting sticky notes to move things around. Every leader, I would suggest you have this in your office as some type of framework for the work in progress. Now, you can use a Kanban board because it really helps kind of create creativity because you can see the bigger picture. You could probably see where the bottlenecks lie, right? What's in that backlog? Who's going to be doing what? And this Kanban board is a great visual representation of that. Now, the values of Scrum. Scrum's an iterative framework that allows us to communicate and create transparency among project teams. So the values of Scrum are, you have 5 of them. They're commitment, openness, courage, respect, and focus. Now, my question for you as leaders is, which one is going to be the most relevant? And I don't think there's any right or wrong answer here, but I think respect is key. You'll see it in the Japanese philosophy that they have a higher turnaround than American workers do with productivity. And I like to think a lot of it revolves around that respect for workers and getting things done. So, when we work together as a team and we're respecting each other and we're creating a positive working environment, you're not going to see that revolving door of employee turnover. You're going to see that collaboration and that growth. Are you teaching these principles at your workplace, regardless if they're Scrum or not? Are you showing a commitment to the process? Are you showing that openness for change? How about that focus point? In industries, we're always getting turned or pulled out of meetings. I know when I teach industry classes, it's not too far to say that there might be a manager in that class getting their certification, and they're going to get pulled out of the work. They're going to get pulled out of the classroom. So are you able to focus your team's research? Are you putting that courage in to say, hey, this isn't exactly right. We might need to improve this process. And sometimes being in continuous improvement, you're not going to be the most liked person in the room, but you're going to be the one that keeps the stability there. Now in Agile, there's different principles I want you to take about. But the one thing about Agile, I think as leaders we need to understand is, what is the definition of done, right? How do we define what done is? Well, why is done and the definition of it important? Number one, it creates transparency. Number two, it creates quality assurance. Number three, it creates consistency. And number four, it's talking about team alignment. Right? If you can get everybody on the same page, you're not going to have to rework that process as soon as it gets finished. So I usually get asked, Zach, what's a good, definition of done? Well, at the end of the day, an example of definition of done criteria is all tests have been passed and completed. The feature meets all the acceptance criteria listed in the user story, and documentation has been added or updated. The feature has been reviewed and approved by a peer or team lead, and the feature is deployable and does not break. Now, I think it's kind of a standpoint that if we don't define what the definition of done is in our leadership approach, it can lead to ambiguity, meaning that the workers are not going to understand the process or the end state. And so that's where I try to say, start with that. Start with the end state of what you want accomplished and work yourself backwards and explain it in those steps. Overall, the definition of done sets open the doorway for collaboration. Overall, there are three main roles in Scrum. You have that Scrum Master, who's that servant leader, and he's kind of liaison between what the product owner is, and that's the person that owns the product, along with the development team who creates the product. Now, if you look at this from a standpoint of continuous improvement, your Scrum Master is always going to be sprinting the people towards the goal. And because you know how it is, you're in meetings, you get bogged down with ideas. You need that one person that's a focal point to be like, look guys, we need to get the shit done. Okay, at the end of the day, we still have to accomplish this mission. How do we do it as efficiently as possible? And sometimes, I will tell you the truth, even as a Six Sigma consultant professional, when we try to improve our own processes, being at that level, we're caught in those silos, right? So an agile scrum master can, prelude that because they see that bigger overarching picture, right? And they can guide the team's success. The product owner in this role, that's the person that is, overall accountable for the project, right? And then you have that development team, or they call it dev team too. So you might hear that terminology, but creating that development team, who are your subject matter experts for the most part. As we communicate timelines and things like that, that's where that development team really sets the stage. Now, I am somewhat of a comic book nerd, and I think an easier way to understand Scrum is by introducing us to the Avengers, right? When you think about the Avengers and their roles, who is that Scrum Master in the group? Who is that product owner? And who's the development team? Well, as I see here, Iron Man, he would be more of the product owner, right? Because he's the one that supplies the financial aspect of the Avengers team. Those of you who don't know, right? And your Steve Rogers, Captain America, he's going to be that Scrum Master because he liaisons with Tony or Iron Man, and they communicate that change, and then Cap or Steve Rogers will go and communicate that with his development team, right? When you think of Scrum roles in the industry, think about the perspective of your own job, right? Who's going to be that Iron Man, that product owner? Who's going to be that Scrum Master, that Steve Rogers? And who's going to be the development team? Now, as a leader, we don't dictate timelines. Our timelines are given to us by our subject matter experts. I'm going to go ahead and save you some time right now. Put 25% buffer on anything you do. Because as a stakeholder, as Tony Stark, I would rather you release money to me than ask me for more of it, right? It kind of goes to show that if we're really giving a continuous improvement effort approach, our goal should be releasing money back at some point in this project, right? That's not often the case, though, is it? We often run into times where we're over budget. Scope creep really creeps up on us, and then towards the end life cycle of the project, we're realizing we're a little bit short in some aspects, whether that's material or cost. So overall, a Scrum team that, again, is the Scrum Master, the product owner, and the development team. Now, keep in mind, you're probably not going to see a whole lot of your product owner, right? Now, that's because, they're going to be leading other industry projects. And your Scrum Master is going to be that focal point for leadership and direction for the development team. During those daily meetings that we talked about, give me a second, I'll pull it back up. That Scrum Master is going to be asking these questions. What is essentially, what did we accomplish today? What will we work on today? What did we accomplish yesterday? What did we work on today? And what are some obstacles we have in our way? You see, that Scrum team in the meeting helps us identify any of those barriers. And that's why we use a daily Scrum to go about and facilitate that change. So, as you start to acquire your leadership abilities in Scrum and Agile, are you meeting with your team regularly? Or are you that leader that's kind of removed from the situation a little bit? And if that's you, you may want to look at getting more involved with your team. Now, I will say leadership and applying these principles is a lot harder than lecturing about them, right? But I want to give you a framework to roll off of. It's not just going to be, hey, use these skills, change everything you're doing tomorrow. It's slowly incorporating these leadership aspects into your toolbox. So keep in mind the 3 questions the next time you do a daily Scrum meeting. You know, what did you accomplish yesterday? What will you work on today? And what are your obstacles? These are questions your employees and staff and the people that help you create that change really they grow off of. They can understand it. They can prep for it in the meetings, right? So you're not just sitting there waiting for them to come up with an answer. This is the driving point because it gives everybody a focal point. When we apply Scrum on the job, I want you to think of it from this standpoint. We've got to understand the framework, and understanding the basics is going to really help us apply Scrum in our organization. We're going to define the product backlog. What's that grocery list of items that help us change or create a product? If you're an iPhone, what are some things you want in that grocery list of things you want for the iPhone 16? Hopefully it'll come with a damn C charger. I have no idea. Why don't you have a C charger? Why don't you just make things universal, iPhone? Anyway, Apple. Calm down, instructor. So when we talk about a functional team, right, how do you create that cross-functional team? That cross-functional team is important because it's going to give that overall perspective, that holistic approach through an organizational's viewpoint. And then how are you going to do your daily stand-up meetings, your Scrum meetings? Are you going to discuss about these processes? Is it going to be as frequent? Now, I say they should be daily. Sometimes our roles, we don't make change a priority. We take a look at everything we've got coming in, and it doesn't help us look at the change aspect of it, right? We've got all our processes, the daily meetings, the not daily meetings, but the department meetings, the chair meetings, the industry manager, the quality assurance aspect meeting. And sometimes it's hard to create effective change. But if you don't make time for it, guess what? You're going to be forced to later on at a really difficult time. So I would much rather you, and I'm sure you would too, is apply these frameworks as you go along to improve your processes. As we look at this, we want to prioritize our product backlog. What items are going to be relevant or the most pertinent, or maybe they're the most time consuming, right? That kind of comes into play with prioritization. And we talk about that continuous improvement mindset. This is how you truly apply Scrum on the job, is by always focusing on how we can improve. Whether you come from the military or industry, sometimes there's such a huge just lack of regard for waste in processes. Well, at the end of the day, who ultimately pays for that? Well, if you're in the military, the taxpayers pay for those waste at times, those 2-hour lunch breaks. I know all about those things. And so, when we talk about that waste of accountability of where your people are, that's something to take into mind and kind of take pride of, is you help facilitate and create the change at the ground level of where you are. Hey, sometimes we can't fix everything. And I'll be first to say, sometimes projects fail in the industry. A lot of it might have to do with communication, those communication barriers. So we want to apply Scrum in a way that it helps us understand it, right? When I talk about the framework of Scrum, I'll go over here and we'll just look at the framework as a whole, right? And you've got that grocery list, right? You've got those sprints, the 2 to 4 week events that really set the stage for sprint planning. How are we going to prioritize through the sprint backlog? How are we going to create that daily scrum? That's all a part of that sprint review cycle. Then you have the increment, right? That increment is going to be what? The Scrum framework and the progression of each phase of the life cycle of the project. When we're agile, we create that speed and efficiency in teams. We don't have to have a rigid structure anymore. There's so many different platforms out there that can help us with time management. I know Monday.com is a great one. There are things you can look at in regards to video software, right? A program I use right now is Loom. I do a lot of recordings to my staff, just like this is how I present. It saves so much time. So check it out, loom.com. I'm not an advertisement for any of these things. I'm just talking about programs I use daily to help run as an organization and make it efficient as possible. When we talk about the agile principles here, I want you to, essentially pause and reflect. And, the agile principle is choosing that customer satisfaction. Frequently delivering products or updates to stakeholders. Creating that face-to-face communication. Reflecting on your process, customer satisfaction, support. How are you going to support that process? How are you going to support your team in this evolution? How do you measure your work progress and how do you seek those results? Right? These are a part of the Agile manifesto. We talk about this in our other Scrum programs. But these are the principles of Scrum that really help us grow. So to get you started and leading industry teams, I'm going to go over just key points of this lesson. Number one, you got your product backlog. That's your grocery list of items that go into it. Well, what's your grocery list if you're building a phone? Well, you're going to have calls. That's priority. What else? Oh, you want to have text message access. You'll want to have web access. And you want to make video calls. As you're building that backlog, you can think about the steps to build a house, right? In this example, the steps to build there would be foundations, the type of material that goes in there. If you look at it from a statistical assets, this is the X variables that have a frequency change to output the different variables. So as we look at our product backlog, how are you building your house? How are you building your project? And then we go from this to sprinting towards that goal. And when we talk about that goal, we sprint towards it, and thus it creates a sprint. Sprints are a short, concise, consistent work cycle that empowers teams to deliver tangible results quickly and efficiently. Now, when we talk about the sprint, how are we designing that architectural plans? How are we getting the permits, laying the foundation, construction, framing, installation, plumbing, and so on? How are we breaking this up into a timeline of phases, right? And then this is how you would do a sprint planning type activity. So essentially, as you saw, we took the items from that backlog and then we structured it in a sprint type involvement, right? Now, keep in mind, what happened if you have like hiccups in the process or you have delays? Well, this is where you're really going to look at it and say, okay, what are priorities here? What's going to take the longest theoretically? And then we'll go from there. In my experience putting together sprints, everything's always been flexible. It's never been like, hey, this is the timeline. You're going to do it on this timeline. Like, nobody's got time for that type of talk. Like, get on, get it. Like, we're talking about adjusting as we go. And that's where, as leaders, I think we can improve the most by being more flexible in our processes, being more flexible in our leadership stance. As we're building these sprints, keep in mind, shit's going to happen. It's going to change. How do we adjust fire and do it without the most repercussions, right? So overall, as an Agile Scrum professional in the industry, we look at growing teams and facilitating that growth from the ground up. Almost done, guys, I promise. Scrum is based on empiricism and lean thinking. Empiricism asserts the knowledge comes from experience and making decisions based on what is observed, right? Lean thinking reduces waste and focuses on the essentials. Scrum employs an iterative, incremental approach to optimize predictability and to control risk. Scrum engages groups of people who collectively have all the skills and expertise to do the work and share or acquire such knowledge as needed, right? So when we think of lean, right, think about identifying value, mapping what the value is, creating that flow as your customer's pulling it through your process to get delivered to them, or your process is delivering that product to the customer. So you're creating that flow, you're establishing that pool when they're pulling it through, and then you're seeking perfection as you are going to continuously improve as you go. And so that's kind of the foundation and principles of lean. And then you have empiricism, which is ideas and knowledge, and develop our minds as a result of our sensory experiences. All right, guys, so before we head out of here, there's something I want to show you guys. This is probably one of the funnest parts of this class. So in our Scrum Master class, we actually have them do a Scrum Master project. And this is just the beginning phase of it, and I really hope you enjoy this.
You have the ticking bomb.
I see 4 buttons.
Your friends have the manual to defuse it.
Press the wavy button. Brilliant.
And you have 5 minutes to talk it out. But beware.
Oh, wait.
It's harder than you might think.
Let's try that again. I figured out the wires. Press the left yellow wire.
So I hope you guys like that. That's a part of the activities we do in our Scrum Master class. We host those once a month at the college. you're welcome to sign up. starglobal.education. It's a great opportunity. You'll network with professionals all around the world, and it's really cool to see and facilitate that change, especially when we have people get hired out of our programs. And it's just such a cool thing to see that community really grow and really, really kind of become a network of people. When I transitioned out of the military, one of the hardest parts I had was connecting with people. Like, I didn't share the same viewpoints. I had more of a kind of asshole tone to myself, and I've had to work on that through the years. But, I think in forming a community, that's where you start to see the biggest growth as individuals. You think about churches and congregations, you see a lot of enjoyment from just being together as a group. I really love to host these events and make them free to the world. It's just something I love doing. And it's fun, man. It's really enjoyable to see like people all the way in London meeting with people in Australia, and it's just really cool to see the different principles and like the different industries too. So you guys, there's a free certification out of this program. The certification is going to be, give me just 1 second. Yeah, so you guys are going to go to starglobal.education, and you'll find a link that says free certifications, and this will be one of the certification exams you go through. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me today, and I hope you enjoyed this segment, and I hope you have a good day, man. Education is important, and I feel like when we educate people, we make them more aware, and we make awareness, we start to neglect on a lot of our, when we bring awareness to stuff, we start to cut down on a lot of our societal issues, right? And so I hope you guys enjoyed this program. I appreciate you, and my wife and I, we wish you all the best in your endeavors, and I hope to see you in a live class sometime. All right, guys, have a good day.